This is the world's first story-completed critical mode run of Kingdom Hearts 3 with a dance pad. My name is Momo and I have done Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2, with Kingdom Hearts 2 being critical mode and all of the super bosses in both games. Compared to Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2, Kingdom Hearts 3 is different because the game does not have Reflect unless you form change with Oblivion, Oathkeeper, or Ultima. Reflect aided me so much in my Kingdom Hearts 2 run against the mobs. The mobs in Kingdom Hearts 2 are more aggressive than in Kingdom Hearts 1. I knew Kingdom Hearts 3's mobs were just as relentless, so I had to adjust the way I played accordingly. If you want to see the whole challenge run, I have a VOD collection on Twitch that you can view. This challenge did have its fair share of rough spots, starting with personal challenges. If there are any elixirs, mega elixirs, I saved those for later as best I could. I don't like farming on stream and would rather save time by farming offline. My feet and ankles get sore. Then there were technical challenges. The dance pad disconnects every 10 minutes. I've been dealing with this disconnect since my Kingdom Hearts 1 with a dance pad run in spring 2022. There hasn't been a way to solve the disconnecting issue. The dance pad's square button always breaks first. I think I've used about 4 to 6 dance pads since my Kingdom Hearts 1 run, and every time I use the square button to dodge roll, it always breaks first. I don't know if it's just my luck, but the square button on the dance pad would only be used for emergencies or when I need a jump and glide. For the majority of the run, I would only be using 3 shortcut options out of the 4. No handlebars. DDR machines have handlebars so that anyone can maintain stability while dancing and to help prevent injury. Unfortunately, I do not have handlebars, making it difficult to stay in position and to quickly step on the buttons in moments that require fast button inputs. Anyone who chooses to use a dance pad has a way to keep themselves upright, either using chairs or a desk. Unfortunately, I don't have room to store handlebars, nor do I have the equipment to make some that I could easily put together then deconstruct after use. In moments where I couldn't figure out how to get past certain points in the game, I would look into speedruns, level 1 runs, and cheese run strats to see if those can be pulled off on a dance pad. Starting this run, I created a New Game Plus file to have access to all of the Keyblades I earned from a standard mode file. I never finished my critical mode run on a controller, thus I don't have Oblivion nor do I have Ultima synthesized. However, I have Oathkeeper from taking pictures of the lucky emblems. This is also my way of stress testing to see if New Game Plus is required for the run. Having access to the late game Keyblades early would help me determine if they're even needed at all. Early in the run, I'll be using the Kingdom Key, Starlight, Midnight Blue, and Star Seeker Keyblades until I beat a world. By then, I have the option to use the respective world's Keyblade. While at the Dive to Heart, I went with the Warrior Path instead of the Guardian Path because I wanted a higher damage output. Though later in the run, I began to regret not going with the Guardian Path. In order for this run to be successful, I need what I call the Holy Trinity: Withstand Combo, also known as Once More, Second Chance, and Leaf Bracer. The Guardian Path will guarantee me gaining these 3 abilities early, while the Warrior Path would force me to unlock them way later. If the Warrior Path did not go as planned, I was willing to start the run over with the Guardian Path. Each world has their own set of gimmicks. The first world, Olympus, wasn't so bad, but I encountered problems in my playthrough. When I did Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2 with the dance pad, I used the center button to lock on to enemies. Since you will always stand on the center button while playing on a dance pad, I would frequently lock on and lock off enemies by accident. I would often have to lock on again constantly. Kingdom Hearts 3's lock on button is toggled with the R1 button, but holding R1 enables shot lock. This meant I couldn't have R1 on the center button because I was constantly standing on it, triggering shot lock. To do this run on critical mode, all buttons that I used in previous runs, X, circle, square, triangle, the directional buttons, R1, L1, and the up button on the D-pad are necessary for this run. It was at this point I decided to pull out my foot pedal and rig the R1 button to it. Once I got the buttons I needed configured, here's how it went through the worlds. In Olympus, I was concerned about the Time Heartless section, the sand mobs, the climb to the top, and the final bosses of this world. Due to Reflect not being present, this game is very lenient with many of the blockable enemy attacks. Although there are more blockable attacks in this game compared to Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2, to compensate for the lack of Reflect, I have limited movement without handlebars, which forces me to rely on the attraction system and the form changes to get by. Once we freed the gods of Olympus, we made our way to Twilight Town. The wave of Heartless was ruthless. They kept slapping me with silly dive attacks. I should have asked Ariel to teach me how to dive like them. As I was already in Twilight Town, I went ahead and checked out the bistro. Definitely ended poorly. After getting bodied by the Heartless, we made it to Toy Box. Now, this is where I understand some people will say, Momo, how in the flying f*** did you do this? And to be real, I dreaded this world due to the gimmicks with the Gigas. I can't turn around in the Gigas on a dance pad. To turn, I would have to map the right analog stick to another dance pad to turn. Additionally, I don't have the space to house another dance pad without worrying about stepping on the dance pad's wire on accident. Immediately, I knew I needed map awareness to farm for kills. This part was stressful, and I spent about 10 minutes for each attempt to get this done. Go around in circles, press triangle, and rinse and repeat. Not to mention, I was constantly getting punched and blasted. Every Gigas has a fixed camera locked in the direction that it is facing. If I exited out of the Gigas, there was a possibility that an enemy Gigas could one-shot me with one punch unless I entered another Gigas. I did not map the L1 button to the dance pad to eject myself from the toy machine. Thus, I had to purposely get hit to be ejected. After some thought, I came up with a strat. Circling around the facility was what I needed to do. But I also needed to get rid of the blue Gigas during every enemy wave. The blue Gigas is the most balanced in terms of mobility and damage range. I could get away with using the red and purple Gigas, but those would be used for emergency purposes. The blue Gigas would guarantee my survival. For every new wave of Gigas that appeared, I had to time getting rid of the blue ones so that I could purposely eject myself from the machine I used via damage. Once out of the toy machine, I hoped and prayed to Chirithy that I'd enter into a new one while being careful not to get one-shotted by an enemy Gigas punch. This strat worked in my favor. After I completed the first Gigas part, I beat up the doll, then headed over to the UFO part. On the way to the UFO, I found out that the Koopa coin had been unlocked, and that I could use it. At first, I wasn't sure if I wanted to use the Koopa coin, since it's a DLC item. However, when the alternative on the warrior path was grinding to level 48 for second chance with stand combo and leaf bracer, I chose to use the Koopa coin to save time. At the UFO Heartless, I was getting the pattern down into the last bit where the UFO teleports and hovers around the map at any given point in time. I thought about using fire to eliminate the Heartless, but I went against it. If the enemy is far enough, fire and water magic may not hit the Heartless before disappearing, and the magic can collide with other objects in the vicinity. I switched to the Starseeker Keyblade to test and see if it will land on the Heartless regardless of where it's located on the map, so long as I lock on the target. The Starseeker Keyblade helped me shoot down the UFO. Once we sent the UFO flying back to Pizza Planet, I had to go into the Verum Rex video game. Here I had to use the technique I used with the Gigas at the entrance of the toy store, which was to walk around in circles, press triangle, and rinse and repeat. This part was tough, because it required map awareness and listening for audio cues from enemy Gigas. I prayed for the enemy boss to walk into their doom over a breakable glass floor, because it was the only viable way to get rid of him. Next, I walked into the play area and kept getting bodied by Gigas. I came up with a plan, which was to defeat a wave of Heartless at a block, go back, and save, then rinse and repeat until the character was complete. I wasn't so sure if this plan would work, but I found out that the Heartless won't appear again once you clear them out, then save after every encounter. When the playroom was done, I whacked the boss with my Keyblade. This boss was alright, except for the flying death rockets at phase 2 and trying to guard against the AoE electric field attack. which was kind of hard to see on my TV monitor 5 feet away. It should have been the little green guys piloting this UFO. After saying goodbye to the Let Him Cook team, I went to touch grass at the Kingdom of Corona. It was nice being one with nature. I befriended a blonde-haired girl, took her to bathe in the waters, and interacted with the locals. They were so friendly that I just ran past them until I encountered this dog. The dog's twirl attack is RNG, meaning they could spin up to 1 to 3 times in a row, so I summoned Wreck-It Ralph here. We got to the Kingdom of Corona, danced, then returned to Rapunzel's tower. This world's final boss was a menace because of its platforming RNG phase. In my first attempt, I tried using just the Keyblade without Wreck-It Ralph, but failed when the platforming segment of the boss appeared at the second health bar. I ended up using the Wreck-It Ralph speedrun strat for this fight. I found out that it's better to use Wreck-It Ralph near the second HP bar before the second phase starts. So my strat was to inflict damage on the tree just before the second HP bar, then summon Wreck-It Ralph to hopefully do damage. I determined that the best way to use Wreck-It Ralph was to navigate myself and the boss to the river. That way, Wreck-It Ralph's blocks have an easier chance of hitting the boss when it smashes its broccoli head onto the ground. During the second phase, I realized that I could use summons to iframe the damage from the bombs. The catch was that I had to make sure I had max MP during this phase to summon Meow Wow, and it's best to navigate to the last gated part before the tower to summon the cat dog creature. Unlike Wreck-It Ralph, Meow Wow can jump and fit through the gate. Due to having my pockets filled with only potions, I equipped Donald and Goofy with ethers to ensure that I had enough MP for the bombing phase. Once I got the plan together, I chopped down the tree, then headed to the big industrial city of Monstropolis. This place wasn't as bad as Toy Box. All I had to do was run through the factory with a cute kid, a blue bear, and Mike Wazowski, which was very straightforward. Though the final boss of this world was a different story. I stress tested the boss to see if I could beat it without using Wreck-It Ralph. Speedrunners have been using Wreck-It Ralph because he could take away 5+ health bars if used correctly and if all the Lego bricks hit the boss. My underleveled Sora could not produce enough damage output to kill the boss fast enough before it spawned another hand phase. I could have gone to grind for levels or used Oathkeeper, but I used Wreck-It Ralph instead. What's this icky paint-like goop? It's dying! After cleaning up the health hazard in a city factory, I ventured to Arendelle. The sledding part with the Heartless was awful, but the sledding minigame was alright. Then I got to the platforming part where a save point was far away. I personally think platforming here on a dance pad is worse than platforming in Kingdom Hearts 1 on a dance pad. In Arendelle, if I make the wrong jump, I could end back to square one, and if I die, I respawn at the base of the mountain. Then there's Marshmallow. This lovable, fluffy snowman loves to give high fives. I had to rely on Wreck-It Ralph and Simba to beat this boss. I think on the way up the mountain, I lost my Koopa coin before we saw Marshmallow. From the Marshmallow encounter, it's a straight run to the big bad wolf of this world. Knowing full well that I was way below the recommended level of this world, I still stress tested the boss. Even with Koopa Coin, I was not doing enough damage with the Ever After Keyblade to get rid of the boss before it killed me. I tried using the Wreck-It Ralph strat, but the boss kept moving around. I even tried a Shotlock Cheese Run strat, where the player uses the Ever After Keyblade Shotlock to inflict damage, then use refocusers while conjuring up fire magic. Unfortunately, the strat didn't work because this requires money that I didn't have in-game. It was at this boss that I decided to pull out Oathkeeper and to rebind the up D-pad button on a controller, triangle button on the dance pad, to the right D-pad button on a controller, triangle button on the dance pad. Doing this allowed me to swap between keyblades. I believe this boss can be defeated without Koopa Coin, since I got the boss down to the second or third HP bar before I lost a coin. The hardest part to guard from this boss was the RNG with the neutral attacks, because they swing too quickly to keep up with on a dance pad. Finally, the beast was slain. We made our way to Pirates, killed the 2 Captain Heartless, then encountered the bird. The bird Heartless was stressful. I quickly learned that I could rig the dance pad like I did with the gummy ship, where the center button on the dance pad is the shoot button, the X button is dodging, and the circle button are the torpedoes. Because I had remapped the dance pad, I had to make sure that Sora was on the Vaporfly Heartless at all times. This setup was designed specifically for the bird Heartless, and not for swimming. So if Sora fell off, I would have to reset the run. I did notice that if multiple Heartless appeared out of nowhere, it means that the next set of Heartless are the ones farting out the colors of the rainbow. The rainbow flying Heartless are basically missiles, and they hurt. It's best to barrel roll around them when it happens. My small TV monitor is 5 feet away, making it difficult to see small objects and projectiles. So when the bird Heartless sent out the white torpedo projectiles, I looked for the gray smoking cloud visual cue. When this happened, I pulled my Heartless ride to the skies, taking advantage of the out-of-bounds feature to iframe. I also want to remind everyone that my dance pad disconnects every 10 minutes. When we found the Leviathan, I thought that the current button setup on the dance pad was enough to get by, but I was reminded that the controls for swimming are different from that of Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2. I needed the Ascend R2 and Descend L2 buttons to get by, so I set R2 on the controller to be the square button on the dance pad, while L2 on the controller was the triangle button on the dance pad. This setup was the same rig I made for when I ventured in Atlantica and Neverland in Kingdom Hearts 1. When I reached the Angler Heartless, I found that dodging away from the direction of the bite attack is better than dodging into it. As we sailed into Port Royal and caught some crabs, I immediately ventured into the next destination with the Leviathan. At first, I had some trouble with the Leviathan. My current dance pad setup was not feasible, so I rigged the dance pad's 4 directional buttons on the right analog stick to move the camera around to shoot the cannons. The X button on the dance pad was rigged to move the ship to the left, while the circle button on the dance pad was to move the ship to the right. The center button on the dance pad was the up button on the analog stick. The select button is square for water wall. The start button are the R2 cannons. The triangle button is just the triangle button. I thought this new rig fit perfectly. However, I still got bodied by the pirate ships. To fix this, I leveled up the Leviathan to level 9, helping me defeat the pirate ships in the following stream. At the final battle of pirates, I had to switch between 2 rigs. The first being the pirate ship, where I basically rigged the directional buttons on the dance pad to the right analog stick to aim with the camera. Then the second rig was for the Davy Jones fight. I ran back with my default dance pad setup for the fight. While Sora was at the recommended level for the Davy Jones fight, there was one problem. Davy Jones has a one-hit kill move when he teleports. He also has a one-hit kill move with his revenge value if you combo him enough times. I learned that if he teleports, there was a likely chance that he would use that one-hit kill move. Every time he teleports, I made it a habit to listen for the teleportation audio cues, then dodge rolling immediately once I heard it in order to hit him. To prevent his revenge value from appearing, I would hit him with a full combo, then fall back. When there was an opportunity, I summoned Wreck-It Ralph. With Wreck-It Ralph, I had to be fast because Davy Jones can teleport out of Ralph's stun. At the second phase with the tentacles, I used Simba to aid in getting rid of them and attacking while dodging attacks. In the final phase of the boss, I used Simba one last time to clear out the tentacles in the center of the boat, leaving out the tentacles in the edges so that I could focus on defeating Davy Jones. After we sunk the ship, it was time for San Francisco. I was a little worried about this place due to the parkour segments, though I ended up getting wrecked by the bosses of this world rather than the parkour gimmicks. When battling Heartless to get to the T-Rex mini-boss, I lost the Koopa coin. In the T-Rex fight, I relied on Oathkeeper and the Ever After Keyblades and mapped the triangle button on the dance pad to switch between Keyblades. When the T-Rex reaches its second HP bar, it goes into an armored rage mode. There are 2 ways to go about this. Either switch to the Ever After Keyblade, add its form change, and make clones to get rid of its HP quickly, or wait it out where eventually the Heartless will revert back to its normal form. I relied on the form changes to iframe in moments where I couldn't dodge or block. At the T-Rex's final phase, I learned to dodge away from the tower when it did its lightning attack, before continuing to smack it into oblivion. I will say that the part where I had to save all the big hero members did take a little bit. I wasn't sure if I was going to get through this one part where I had to save Fred, nor did I know I could just hit the legs to save Honey Lemon instead of using magic. There were some instances in this run where I ran out of money to purchase items from the Moogle shop. I either had to farm or go without the money. I still didn't have enough to grab a Koopa coin, so I fought the Nano Heartless without it. Before the Baymax boss fight, I earned enough to purchase a Koopa coin. While riding Baymax, I spec'd the buttons like I did with the Flying Bird Heartless from Pirates, where the shoot button was on the center button of the dance pad. I found out during this encounter that the Koopa coin cannot be used. I had to be careful and rely on Baymax to heal while memorizing the patterns of the boss. No speedrun or cheese run strat can be used here. After beating Dark Baymax, I considered level grinding for second chance at different worlds instead of San Francisco. But I was reminded that if I left, I would have to deal with the Riku and Aqua fights. I chose not to grind and headed straight into the fights. Being forced to switch between characters was difficult, and required me to tweak the way I played due to my rig catering to Sora. There are no options to spec the other characters like Riku or Aqua either, forcing me to rely on Kiraga. For anti-Aqua, I tried using the Wreck-It Ralph's summon, but she moves around a lot. There was also a Faraga cheese run strat, where I could have switched to the Happy Gear Keyblade and spam Faraga, but doing so would be difficult to pull off against the boss. I had to do this the old-fashioned way, relying on just the Keyblade. I made the decision to push the anti-Aqua fight to the limit by not switching Keyblades or using Oathkeeper. One thing that I found is that the key to avoiding triggering anti-Aqua's revenge value is by hitting her with one full combo, then falling back. I believe this run can be done without a Koopa coin. Once Aqua had been saved, Ventus was next. The Vanitas fight took a little bit. My plan was to use Spellweaver only in moments where I couldn't block or dodge roll in time. I had to move my feet fast to guard since Vanitas teleports. Once we beat up the Darkspawn, it was finally time to barrel roll in space and fight the big bad ship Heartless. Before heading into the Keyblade Graveyard, I knew I needed second chance and a ton of money going forward. I would not survive on just luck and the Koopa coin alone. The organization members pack harder punches. I will be facing them in groups of 2 and 3 instead of 1 at a time like the previous bosses, making it difficult to lock onto certain characters I want to defeat first. After the Heartless fight in the Keyblade Graveyard, a Moogle shop and save point are only available after defeating every 2 groups of bosses. If I helped out Riku and lost the Koopa coin in that group fight, then I have to continue to Mickey's fight. The same goes for the Seesaw and Wayward trio. The game will not allow me to return to a Moogle shop to purchase items until 2 groups are defeated. Then there's the North Court I have to worry about. Additionally, I was poor in this game. I needed to purchase all the items I thought were necessary for the battles ahead. Knowing this information, I spent time offline grinding levels for Sora until he reached level 48. Finally, unlocking second chance. I decided to grind before the Keyblade Graveyard because it's easier and faster to grind for levels at this point of the story. The best places to farm are either demolishing ships in Pirates or at the Labyrinth in Arendelle. After farming, I was prepared for the upcoming battles. Technically, I could have farmed for elixirs if I chose to gain more money, though I cut down the time to farm by relying on Kiraga, potions, and ethers here. I spec'd the triangle button on the dance pad to change keyblades instead of scrolling up the command menu. My shortcuts had potions, Kiraga, and Sea Spectacle. Sea Spectacle would be used for emergencies and if I was in a pinch against a wave of Heartless. I barely used the fourth shortcut button, since the square button on the dance pad, jump button, is farther to reach from the start button on the dance pad, resulting in only using the square button for emergencies. For the Riku segment, I made it a priority to get rid of Xigbar first, since he shoots from afar before ending Dark Riku. For the Mickey segment, I bonked Luxord first, Larxene second, and Marluxia third. I went after Larxene after Luxord since she sticks to you like glue more than Marluxia, making her easier to target. I found Marluxia to be the hardest one to get rid of on a dance pad out of the three. For the Sea Salt trio, it was easy to cheese since Roxas cleaves. Out of all the battles before the Nort Court, the Wayward trio was the hardest. Technically, I had to rely on RNG here while also fighting against the 10-minute disconnect on the dance pad. At first, I aimed for Terranort, but Vanitas got in the way whenever Terranort used his destruction move. Towards the end of this fight, I decided to defeat Vanitas first and prayed for RNG from the AI to be there to help me finish him. I wasn't sure if Vanitas could still be hurt by projectiles while he does his DM, but I made it my goal to see if Shot Lock would work, and thankfully, it did. One down, one to go! I went ahead and kicked Terranort's butt. The Nort Court is one of the hardest fights in Kingdom Hearts 3. This fight was what I had been dreading from the very beginning of this challenge run. I thought, if I make it here, can I do it? I had to pray for RNG to be in my favor here. My initial strategy was to get rid of young Xehanort first, then Xemnas, and then Ansem. Young Xehanort is who I found the most annoying out of the three, because his whips are fast and painful. I got lucky with the dodges, the heals, and the lock-on, and was able to clear out young Xehanort first. Although I sent the boy back to his time, I lost the Koopa coin during the three-way battle. Now, it was Xemnas and Ansem. I reset by wiping, then clicked on prepare and retry to fill up my item inventory before heading back into the battle. At first, I wanted to get rid of Xemnas first, but the lock-on was not in my favor. It was either aiming at the wrong person or I was facing the wrong way. I ended up going with the grain and seeing where it would take me by just jumping between both bosses. When jumping between bosses, the battle drags on longer and has a higher chance of using up my potions if I don't dodge and guard accordingly, and if RNG was not in my favor. Luckily, I knocked down Ansem. It was Xemnas' fight now. I finished him with my stick. Aside from the Nort Court, I remember having trouble with the 13-member battle on a controller in Scala Ad Kyla. Without a second thought, I looked into using the Eriga speedrun strat to take care of them. This strat requires spamming Eriga with a Keyblade of high magic and consuming high ethers or elixirs. In the beginning, I equipped Sora, Donald, and Goofy with only ethers to see if it was enough to Eriga the beings. After 2 attempts and knocking down 2 HP bars, I was pleased with the results. I ended the stream early so that I could farm for money to buy high ethers. In the following stream, I spec'd Sora, Donald, and Goofy with high ethers and defeated the mini-boss, initiating the Xehanort final boss fight. Before I continue, subscribe to this channel for more content. I make no promises about tackling the Remind DLC. However, there is no telling what I will do next with my content. I found Xehanort to be the hardest to tackle in the main story campaign than the Nort Court. Sure, there was the first phase with the Doctor Strange world magic and the underwater segment. I thought I was going to be stuck underwater, but memorizing the patterns wasn't bad. I just needed to hope and pray that Donald and Goofy were alive to help keep me alive in case I used up Kiraga. Then there's the third phase, where I had to fly around. It was hard to see and maneuver around the flying pillars. I think it was at this part I lost the Koopa coin. Next, we made it to the final fight. The second phase was where I think Xehanort was the hardest to fight than the Nort Court because of his Pillar of Light attack. I basically had to perfect this fight by guarding and dodging while I relied on RNG for heals. Memorizing attacks weren't bad, but what was frustrating was the RNG of Xehanort's attacks. He could do the Beyblade attack, this one attack where he does a couple of hits, or do that consecutive slash attack where he hops between Sora, Donald, and Goofy before floating. There's no telling which of the three he will do. Then there's the phase where there are lasers and multiple copies of Xehanort dashing towards Sora. The camera was in the way a couple of times. If I can't see the copies, then I can't guard and dodge roll in time. Once I got through the Shadow Clone Jutsu phase, I had to remain calm to finish off Xehanort. I had been on this run since the beginning of October 2023, and it's been a wild journey. I honestly wasn't so sure if this was possible, though I'm glad I pushed through. Thank you very much to everyone who tuned into this adventure. May your heart be your guiding key.